You should have kept your mouth shut, Hannah. Now, look at you. Homeless. Nameless. Nothing. Those words echoed in her mind as the snow swallowed her whole. The voice belonged to Dr. Richard Caldwell, Chief Medical Officer of Denver Metropolitan Hospital, the man who had smiled at her across a conference table while signing the documents that ended her career. His face had been calm, almost bored, as he slid the termination papers toward her. "You thought you were saving lives," he had said, leaning back in his leather chair. "But all you did was make yourself unemployable. No hospital in this country will touch you now. You are finished." She had believed him, and now, 14 months later, Hannah Moore lay curled against a wooden fence post somewhere in the Colorado highlands, her thin jacket soaked through, her fingers blue, her body shutting down one system at a time. The blizzard had come faster than the weather report predicted. She had been walking for hours, maybe days. Time had lost all meaning when you had nowhere to go. The snow fell in thick curtains, erasing the world around her. She could no longer feel her feet. Her eyelids grew heavy, and somewhere in the fog of hypothermia, she heard another voice. Her mother's voice from the day of the disciplinary hearing. Hannah has always been emotionally unstable. She exaggerates. She sees problems where there are none. Her own mother, under oath, looking everywhere except at her daughter's face. Hannah stopped fighting. The cold wrapped around her like a blanket, and she thought perhaps this was better. Perhaps disappearing into the white silence was the kindest ending she could hope for. Before we continue, tell us where you are watching from tonight. Drop your location in the comments and stay until the end, because what happened next changed everything. She did not hear the footsteps crunching through the snow. She did not see the beam of the flashlight cutting through the darkness, but somewhere, through the haze of fading consciousness, she heard barking. Sharp, insistent, desperate barking. And then a voice. Deep, rough, commanding. "Easy, Scout. Easy. I see her." Ryan Hale had not expected to find anything but a broken fence post tonight. The storm had knocked down a section of his eastern perimeter, and he had trudged out into the blizzard because the cattle would wander if he did not fix it by morning. He had learned long ago that the ranch did not care about weather or exhaustion or the fact that he had not slept properly in 3 years. The work needed doing, so he did it. Scout had other plans. The Rottweiler puppy was only 4 months old, still gangly and uncoordinated, but his nose was sharper than any equipment Ryan had carried in the SEALs. The moment they stepped outside, Scout had pulled toward the fence line, whining, pawing at the snow, refusing to follow Ryan's commands. Ryan had learned to trust that instinct. Now he stood over a woman who looked more dead than alive, her lips white, her skin the color of ash, her body curled into a fetal position against the old wooden gate. The same gate his grandfather had built 60 years ago. The same gate Ryan had walked past 1,000 times without thinking. He dropped to his knees, pressing 2 fingers against her neck. The pulse was there, but barely. Thread-like. Fading. "Stay with me," he said, though he knew she could not hear him. "Do not you dare quit on me." He scooped her up in his arms, surprised by how light she was. Too light. This woman had not eaten properly in weeks, maybe longer. Her clothes were soaked through, inadequate for the season, inadequate for survival. Whatever had driven her out here, she had not planned to come back. Scout bounded ahead, barking, leading the way back to the cabin as if he understood the urgency. Ryan moved as fast as the snow would allow, his boots sinking into drifts up to his knees, his breath coming in white clouds that the wind tore apart instantly. The cabin appeared through the blizzard like a ghost, its windows dark, its chimney trailing smoke that vanished into the storm. Ryan kicked the door open, carried the woman inside, and laid her on the rug in front of the wood stove. He worked with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. Remove the wet clothes. Wrap in dry blankets. Warm the core first. Extremities later. Do not rub the frost-bitten skin. Do not move too fast. Hypothermia victims could go into cardiac arrest if you rewarmed them incorrectly. He knew this. He had trained for this. He had saved men in worse conditions in mountain ranges far more hostile than this one. But those men had been his brothers, his teammates, men he had chosen to save. This woman was a stranger. Ryan found himself hesitating, his hands hovering over her unconscious form, his mind running through all the reasons he should have left her in the snow. He had come to this ranch specifically to be alone. 3 years ago, he had walked away from everything he knew, everything he was, and buried himself in this frozen corner of Colorado, because the silence was easier than the questions. The questions that never stopped. The questions he could not answer. Why did you survive when they did not? What made you special? Why are you still here? He shook his head, pushing the thoughts away. There would be time for self-pity later. Right now, there was work to do. He made hot water, dissolved sugar and salt into it, and dribbled the solution between her lips when she showed the first signs of consciousness. He piled more wood into the stove until the cabin glowed with heat. He sat beside her through the long hours of the night, checking her pulse, watching her breathing, waiting for the moment when her body would decide whether to live or die. Scout curled up at her feet and refused to move. Ryan watched the puppy with something like surprise. Scout did not trust strangers. The dog had been skittish and defensive since the day Ryan found him, shivering and half-starved behind the hay barn after a particularly brutal storm. It had taken weeks of patient work before Scout would let Ryan touch him without flinching. The idea that the same dog would choose to guard this unknown woman seemed impossible. But dogs knew things that humans did not. Ryan had learned that in Afghanistan, working alongside military canine units that could detect ambushes before any human sensed danger, dogs did not lie. They did not pretend. If Scout trusted this woman, there was a reason. Dawn came slowly, the storm finally exhausting itself as the first gray light crept across the snow-covered fields. Ryan had not slept. He sat in the old wooden chair that had belonged to his father, watching the woman's chest rise and fall, counting the seconds between each breath. Her eyes opened just after 7 a.m. For a moment, she simply stared at the ceiling, her expression blank, her mind clearly struggling to process where she was. Then awareness flooded in, and with it, fear. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the wall, her eyes wild and searching. "Where am I? Who are you? What do you want?" Ryan did not move from his chair. He kept his hands visible, his voice low and steady. "You are safe. My name is Ryan Hale. You were freezing to death against my fence last night. My dog found you." Her eyes darted around the room, taking in the sparse furniture, the hunting rifles mounted above the door, the photographs on the wall. Her gaze lingered on one image in particular, a group of 6 men in desert camouflage, their faces tanned and tired but grinning at the camera. "Where am I?" she repeated, her voice cracking. "My ranch, about 40 miles from the nearest town. The storm knocked out the roads. You are stuck here until they clear, probably a few days." She processed this information slowly, her shoulders still tense, her body poised to run even though she clearly had nowhere to go. Ryan recognized that posture. He had seen it in refugees, in prisoners, in people who had learned through hard experience that safety was always temporary. "I did none." She stopped, swallowed, started again. "I did not mean to trespass. I will leave as soon as I can." "In what? You do not have a car. You do not have supplies. You do not even have a coat that works." He gestured toward the pile of wet clothes he had hung near the stove. "Whatever you were running from, it will have to wait." Her jaw tightened at the word running. He had hit a nerve. "I was not running. I was just walking." "In a blizzard? In a jacket meant for autumn in the city?" Ryan shook his head slowly. "You can lie to yourself if you want, but do not lie to me. I have seen enough people at the end of their rope to know what it looks like." She met his gaze then, and for the first time, he saw something other than fear in her eyes. Something hard and bright and unbroken. This woman had been through more than he could guess, but she had not given up. Not entirely. "I do not owe you an explanation," she said quietly. "No, you do not." He stood, moving to the small kitchen area. "Coffee?" She blinked at the abrupt change of subject. "What?" "Coffee. Hot. Warms you up from the inside. I am making some anyway." A long pause. Then, slowly, she nodded. Ryan busied himself with the coffee pot, giving her space to collect herself. He heard the blankets rustle as she wrapped them more tightly around her shoulders. Heard Scout's tail thump against the floor as the dog pressed closer to her. "Your dog," she said after a moment. "He stayed with me all night." "He did?" Waiting to her, Ryan glanced over his shoulder. Scout had his head resting on the woman's knee, his brown eyes gazing up at her with complete trust. In 4 months, the dog had never done that with anyone except Ryan. "I do not know," he admitted. "He does not usually take to strangers. Maybe he knows something I do not." She looked down at Scout, and something in her expression softened. Her hand moved slowly, hesitantly, to rest on the dog's head. Scout's tail wagged harder. "He is beautiful," she murmured. "He is a troublemaker. Found him half dead after a storm, just like you. Someone dumped him on the road, I think. Left him to die." Ryan poured 2 cups of coffee, brought one to her. "Name is Scout. He is about 4 months old. Rottweiler mix, probably. Eats like a horse and thinks he is a lapdog." She accepted the cup with both hands, wrapping her fingers around the warmth. For a long moment, she just held it, letting the steam rise against her face. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving me." "You did not have to." Ryan settled back into his chair, his own coffee untouched. "The alternative was letting you die on my property. Paperwork would have been a nightmare." She almost smiled at that. Almost. "You can stay until the storm clears," he continued. "There is food. There is heat. There is a spare corner where you can sleep. After that, you go wherever you were going. I will not ask questions. I will not get involved. This is temporary. And if I cannot go anywhere?" The question hung in the air between them. Ryan studied her face, seeing the shadows under her eyes, the hollowness in her cheeks, the way her hands trembled even wrapped around the warm cup. This woman had no home, no money, no options. Whatever had happened to her, it had stripped away everything. He should tell her to leave anyway. He should remind himself why he came to this ranch in the first place, why he had spent 3 years avoiding human connection, why he had convinced himself that isolation was the only way to survive the guilt that never stopped eating at him. Instead, he heard himself say, "We will figure that out when we get there." She looked at him with something like confusion, as if kindness without conditions was a foreign concept. Then she nodded once, accepting the temporary truce, and turned her attention to Scout, who had climbed halfway into her lap despite being far too large for such behavior. Ryan watched them together, the broken woman and the abandoned dog, and felt something shift in his chest. Something dangerous. Something he had spent 3 years trying to bury. Hope. He crushed it immediately, turning to stare out the window at the endless white landscape. Hope was for people who had not learned what he had learned. Hope was for people who still believed that caring about someone would not end in their death. He had buried 5 brothers in the Afghan mountains. 5 men who trusted him, followed him, died because of a decision he made. Their names were carved into his memory like scars that would never fade. Martinez, Cooper, Jensen, Blackwood, Reyes. Every night, he heard their voices in his dreams. Every morning, he woke up reaching for a rifle that was no longer there. He had come to this ranch to disappear, to maintain the fences, tend the cattle, and wait for the day when the guilt finally consumed him completely. He had not planned on rescuing anyone. He had not planned on caring. But Scout had found her, and Scout, apparently, had decided she belonged here. The puppy looked up at Ryan now, tail still wagging, eyes bright with the innocent certainty that everything would be fine. Dogs did not understand survivor's guilt. Dogs did not understand the weight of 5 graves. Dogs only understood warmth, food, and the people who provided them. Maybe that was enough. If you are still with us, hit that subscribe button now. This story is just beginning, and you will not want to miss what happens next. The woman, whose name he still did not know, had fallen asleep again, exhaustion finally overtaking fear. Scout remained at her side, a furry guardian who had appointed himself to a post no one had asked him to fill. Ryan covered her with another blanket, added more wood to the fire, and stepped outside to check the damage from the storm. The snow had piled in drifts 4 feet high against the barn. Several fence posts had snapped under the weight of ice. The cattle had huddled together in the far pasture, their breath rising in clouds, their eyes rolling with the stress of the night. There was work to be done, more work than one man could reasonably handle, and Ryan welcomed it. Work meant not thinking. Work meant focusing on the next task, the next problem, the next broken thing that needed fixing. He had rebuilt this ranch from neglect over 3 years, pouring his energy into physical labor because it was the only thing that quieted the noise in his head. But today, as he trudged through the snow toward the fallen fence, he found his thoughts drifting back to the woman in his cabin. Who was she? What had driven her to walk into a blizzard with nothing but a thin jacket and a death wish she would not admit to? And why had his dog, his suspicious, skittish, trust-nothing dog, chosen her? Ryan did not believe in coincidence. He did not believe in fate. He believed in cause and effect, in training, in the cold mathematics of survival. But there was something about last night that defied explanation. The timing of the storm. Scout's insistence on checking the fence. The fact that he had looked right instead of left at exactly the moment her body appeared in his flashlight beam. If he had been 5 minutes later, she would have been dead. If Scout had not been there, he never would have found her. If. The word haunted him as he worked, dragging broken fence posts out of the snow, measuring new lumber, hammering nails with more force than necessary. By the time he finished, his arms ached, and his hands were numb despite the thick gloves. But the fence stood strong again. One more broken thing fixed. One more problem solved. He returned to the cabin as the sun began its descent toward the mountains, painting the snow in shades of orange and pink. The woman was awake, sitting up now, Scout still pressed against her side. She had found the bread he kept in the cupboard and was tearing small pieces from a slice, eating slowly, carefully, like someone who had gone too long without food and did not trust her stomach. She looked up when he entered, and for the first time he noticed the color of her eyes. Brown, deep brown, like autumn leaves before they fell. There was intelligence in those eyes, and pain, and something else he could not quite name. "I should tell you my name," she said, "since I am eating your food and sleeping in your house." Ryan pulled off his gloves, hung his coat by the door. "Only if you want to." Hannah Moore. Ryan Hale. He had already told her, but it felt right to say it again, to make the introduction formal. Former Navy SEAL, current cattle rancher, part-time rescuer of frozen strangers. That almost smile flickered across her face again. "Nice to meet you, Ryan." "Likewise, Hannah." He moved to the kitchen, began pulling together ingredients for a simple stew. "You should eat more than bread. Your body needs protein, fat, calories. You are running on empty." "You do not have to take care of me." "I know, but Scout will never forgive me if I let you starve after he went to all the trouble of finding you." She glanced down at the dog, who thumped his tail at the mention of his name. "He really is something special. He is annoying, is what he is. Follows me everywhere, steals socks, cannot seem to understand that he is supposed to sleep in his bed, not mine." Ryan's voice was gruff, but there was affection underneath, carefully hidden. "But yes, he is special. Here is a question for you, our amazing viewers. Have you ever had a moment when a stranger changed your life? Share your story in the comments below. We read every single one. The stew simmered on the stove, filling the cabin with the smell of onions and beef and rosemary. Outside, the wind had died to a whisper, and the snow sparkled under the emerging stars like a field of diamonds. It would have been beautiful, Ryan thought, if beauty still meant anything to him. Hannah remained quiet, watching him cook with an expression he could not read. Finally, she spoke. "You said you were a Navy SEAL." "Was, past tense." "What happened?" The question hung in the air. Ryan stirred the stew, not looking at her. "That is a long story." "We have time. You said the roads are blocked for days." He should shut this down. Should tell her it was none of her business. Should remind her that their arrangement was temporary, practical, devoid of personal connection. Instead, he found himself glancing at the photograph on the wall. 6 men grinning in the desert sun. 5 of them dead. "I made a bad call," he said quietly. "People died. End of story." Hannah was silent for a long moment. Then, "I know what that feels like. Making a decision that costs you everything." He looked at her then, really looked, and saw the reflection of his own pain staring back at him. Whatever she had done, whatever had driven her to this frozen corner of nowhere, it had left the same kind of scars. "Maybe you do," he said. They ate in silence after that, the stew warming them from the inside, Scout begging for scraps that both of them pretended not to give him. The fire crackled. The wind whispered against the windows. And somewhere in the quiet, something shifted between them. Not trust. Not yet. But the beginning of understanding. Two broken people, stranded together by a storm neither of them had expected. Neither of them knowing that the real storm was still to come. The days folded into one another like pages of a book neither of them had planned to write. Hannah grew stronger with each meal, each hour of warmth, each night wrapped in blankets that smelled of cedar and wood smoke. The color returned to her cheeks. The trembling in her hands subsided. She moved through the cabin with increasing awareness, learning where Ryan kept the dishes, how the floorboards creaked near the kitchen, which window let in the most morning light. Scout refused to leave her side. The puppy slept at the foot of her makeshift bed, followed her to the bathroom door, and whined whenever she moved out of his sight. Ryan watched this behavior with quiet fascination. In 4 months, Scout had never attached himself to anyone so completely. On the third morning, Hannah insisted on helping with breakfast. Ryan protested, told her she needed rest, but she was already reaching for the cast-iron skillet before he finished speaking. "I cannot just sit here and eat your food," she said. "Let me do something." They cooked together in the small kitchen, shoulders nearly touching in the cramped space. Hannah scrambled eggs while Ryan fried bacon, the smell of breakfast filling the cabin with warmth that had nothing to do with the wood stove. Outside, snow continued to fall in gentle curtains, sealing them away from the world. "You know your way around a kitchen," Ryan observed. "Night shift nurses learn to cook fast. You have 15 minutes for dinner, and the cafeteria closed 3 hours ago." She smiled, the expression still tentative but genuine. "I used to make eggs for the whole department during holiday shifts. Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's Eve. Someone had to keep morale up." They ate at the small wooden table, Scout positioned strategically between them, eyes darting from plate to plate, with transparent hope. The bacon disappeared faster than either of them intended. "He is shameless," Hannah laughed, scratching behind Scout's ears. "He knows exactly what he is doing. Do not let him fool you." The moment of lightness shattered without warning. From somewhere down the valley, carried on the wind, came the distant wail of a siren. An ambulance, perhaps, or a fire truck responding to some emergency miles away. The sound was faint, almost swallowed by the snow, but Hannah's reaction was immediate and violent. She dropped her fork, her face draining of color. Her hands flew to cover her ears, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Her eyes squeezed shut, and her whole body trembled as if the temperature had dropped 30 degrees. Ryan moved without thinking, years of training taking over. He knelt beside her, kept his voice low and steady. "Hannah, you are safe. You are in my cabin in Colorado. That siren is miles away. It has nothing to do with you." She did not respond. Her lips moved soundlessly, and tears leaked from the corners of her closed eyes. "Listen to my voice. Focus on my voice. Breathe in through your nose. Hold it. Now out through your mouth. Again. In, hold, out." It took several minutes before her breathing steadied. When she finally opened her eyes, shame flooded her expression. "I am sorry. I did not mean to. It just happens sometimes. The sirens, they remind me of—" "You do not have to explain." "No, I want to." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "Every time I hear that sound, I am back in the emergency room, back in the moment when everything fell apart." Ryan returned to his chair but kept his posture open, his attention focused entirely on her. He did not push. He simply waited. Her name was Eleanor Patterson, Hannah began, her voice barely above a whisper. 72 years old, retired schoolteacher. She came in complaining of chest pain, classic heart attack symptoms. I hooked her up to the cardiac monitor and went to check on another patient. When I came back, she stopped, swallowed hard. The monitor had malfunctioned. It showed normal readings when her heart was failing. By the time I realized something was wrong, it was too late. That was not your fault. No, it was not. But they made sure everyone believed it was. Hannah's hands curled into fists. The equipment had been flagged for replacement 6 months earlier. Budget cuts. The hospital administration decided that buying a new cardiac monitor was less important than their quarterly bonuses. If this story is speaking to you, take a moment to subscribe. What happens next will stay with you long after the video ends. The fire crackled in the wood stove, casting dancing shadows across the cabin walls. Outside, the wind had picked up, howling around the corners of the building like something alive and hungry. Hannah pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, drawing comfort from its weight. When I reported what happened, I thought I was doing the right thing. I had documentation, emails showing the maintenance requests that were ignored, records proving the equipment failure. I thought the truth would protect me. It rarely does, Ryan said quietly. Dr. Richard Caldwell, Chief Medical Officer. He called me into his office 3 days after I filed my complaint. Hannah's voice hardened. He sat behind his mahogany desk, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly rent, and he smiled at me. Like we were friends, like he was about to offer me a promotion. She stood abruptly, pacing to the window, her reflection ghost-like in the frost-covered glass. He said I had 2 choices: withdraw my complaint and keep my job, or watch him destroy everything I had built. When I refused to back down, he made good on his promise. Your license, suspended, pending investigation into claims that I falsified patient records, claims that came out of nowhere, supported by documents I had never seen before. She turned to face Ryan, her eyes bright with unshed tears. And my family, my own mother, sat in that hearing room and told the board I was emotionally unstable, that I had always exaggerated, that I could not be trusted. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with a grief that went beyond professional betrayal. They chose their comfort over their daughter, Ryan said. They chose their fear. Caldwell has connections everywhere. My father works for a company that does business with the hospital. My brother's wife is a resident in their surgery department. Standing by me would have cost them everything. She laughed bitterly. So they sacrificed me instead. Scout padded over to Hannah, pressing his warm body against her legs. She reached down automatically, her fingers finding the soft fur behind his ears. I spent 14 months trying to rebuild, applying to every hospital, every clinic, every nursing home in 3 states. No one would touch me. Caldwell made sure of that. He told everyone I was dangerous, delusional, a liability waiting to happen. She shook her head slowly. Eventually, I stopped trying, stopped eating, stopped caring whether I lived or died. And then I ended up here, freezing against your fence, hoping the snow would finally make it all stop. Ryan stood, moved to stand beside her at the window. He did not touch her, but his presence was solid, grounding. I know what it feels like, he said, to be destroyed by people who were supposed to protect you, to carry guilt that is not yours to carry. Hannah looked at him, really looked, and saw the same wounds reflected in his eyes. The photograph on your wall, the men in uniform. My team, my brothers. His jaw tightened. 5 of them died because I made a bad call in Afghanistan. Intelligence said the area was clear. I trusted that intelligence. I led them into an ambush. Ryan. Martinez was 26, just married. His wife was pregnant with their first child. Ryan's voice remained steady, but his hands had curled into fists at his sides. Cooper had 3 kids. Jensen was 2 months from retirement. Blackwood and Reyes were the youngest, barely old enough to vote when they enlisted. He turned away from the window, moving to add wood to the fire that did not need it. I was team leader. The decision was mine, and they paid for my mistake with their lives. Hannah crossed the room, stopping an arm's length away. You carry ghosts. Ryan looked at her over his shoulder. So do you. The acknowledgement settled between them like a bridge spanning a chasm neither had known how to cross alone. That night, Hannah woke to the sound of anguished murmuring from across the cabin. Ryan thrashed in his bed, sheets tangled around his legs, words spilling from his lips. In fragments of nightmare. Martinez, get down. Cooper, on your left. I am sorry. I am sorry. She did not approach, did not try to wake him. She understood that some battles had to be fought alone, in the dark theaters of memory where no one else could follow. Instead, she lay still, listening, bearing witness to his pain the way he had borne witness to hers. When morning came, neither of them mentioned it. But something had shifted. A wall had crumbled. They moved around each other with new awareness, new tenderness. Ryan made coffee before she woke, setting a steaming cup on the table where she would find it. Hannah left dinner warming on the stove when he returned late from checking the cattle, knowing he would be cold and hungry. Small gestures, unspoken kindnesses, the language of 2 people learning to care for each other without the risk of words. Scout recovered from his infection with the resilience of youth, bounding through the snow, chasing shadows, demanding attention from both his humans with equal enthusiasm. He had claimed them as his pack, and he enforced the boundaries of that claim with stubborn determination. On the 10th day, the snow finally stopped. The sun emerged, blinding against the white landscape, and with it came the reality that their isolation could not last forever. Here is a question for our amazing viewers. Have you ever found healing in an unexpected place? Share your story in the comments below. Hannah stood at the old wooden gate, the same gate where Ryan had found her nearly dead 2 weeks earlier. The wood was weathered, split in places, held together by repairs that spanned generations. She traced her fingers along the grain, thinking about all the hands that had touched this gate before hers, all the stories it had witnessed. Behind her, the cabin chimney trailed smoke into the clear blue sky. Inside, Ryan was preparing lunch, and Scout was almost certainly supervising with the intensity of a health inspector. She should go back, should help, should stop standing here like a woman at a crossroads, uncertain which direction to choose. Her phone weighed heavy in her pocket. She had turned it on that morning for the first time since arriving, telling herself she just wanted to check the weather forecast. The messages had loaded before she could stop them. 17 missed-hour calls, 12 voicemails, and 1 text that turned her blood to ice. We know where you are. This is not over. Dr. Caldwell sends his regards. The gate blurred before her eyes. She gripped the rough wood until splinters bit into her palms, using the pain to anchor herself to the present. She could run, could disappear again, find another remote corner of the world, keep moving until they gave up, or she did. It was what she had been doing for over a year. It was the only strategy she knew. But running meant leaving. Leaving this cabin. Leaving Scout. Leaving Ryan. The thought struck her with unexpected force. When had this broken stranger become someone she could not bear to lose? That evening, she told him everything, showed him the message, watched his expression harden into something cold and dangerous. "They will not stop," she said. "Caldwell has too much to lose if the truth comes out. As long as I exist, I am a threat to him. So you want to run. I want to protect you. If I stay here, they will come. They will drag you into this nightmare. You have already lost enough because of decisions you did not make. I will not add to that burden." Ryan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was calm but certain. "Do you remember what you told me about Mrs. Patterson? About why you reported the hospital in the first place? Because someone had to. Because you refused to stop caring. Even when it cost you everything." He stood, moved to stand before her. "I have spent 3 years hiding from the world, Hannah. Convincing myself that if I stayed away from people, I could not fail them, could not get them killed. Ryan, but you showed up at my gate half dead, and my dog decided you belonged here. And somewhere in the past 2 weeks, I started to agree with him." Her breath caught. "I am not asking you to stay because I need a housekeeper or a nurse or someone to share the workload. I am asking you to stay because—" He paused, struggling with words that did not come easily to him. "Because I need someone to stay. And you need a home." The tears came then, silent streams down her cheeks that she did not bother to wipe away. "You do not know what you are offering. The cost could be everything." "I know exactly what I am offering, and I know the cost." He reached for her hand, his grip rough and warm and steady. "But this time, I am choosing to fight, and I am asking you to fight with me." The morning Hannah left for Denver, frost painted the windows, and Scout refused to let her out of his sight. She knelt to embrace the dog, burying her face in his warm fur, drawing strength from his unwavering loyalty. "Take care of him for me," she whispered. "Both of him." Ryan stood by the truck, engine running, exhaust rising in white clouds. He had driven her to the bus station himself, would not hear of her making the trip alone. Marcus Webb, the lawyer Ryan had called, met them in the city. Former SEAL, now specializing in whistleblower cases, he had the build of a linebacker and the mind of a chess grandmaster. Within a week, he had assembled a legal team and begun subpoenaing records that Caldwell had thought safely buried. The hearing took place on a Thursday, in a conference room that smelled of old paper and institutional coffee. Hannah wore a borrowed blazer, her hands steady despite the terror that churned in her stomach. Across the table, Dr. Richard Caldwell sat with his attorneys, his expression one of patient condescension. "Ms. Moore has a documented history of emotional instability," his lawyer declared. "These accusations are nothing more than the fantasies of a disgruntled former employee." Hannah listened to the familiar lies, felt the old shame threatening to surface. Then she remembered Ryan's words from that morning. "They win by making you believe you are alone. Show them you are not." When her turn came, she stood on legs that no longer trembled. "I did not lose my career because I was wrong. I lost it because I refused to stop caring." Her voice carried to every corner of the room. "Every document I submitted was real. Every patient I tried to protect was real. You can take my license. You can take my reputation, but you cannot take the truth." The evidence Marcus had gathered spoke louder than any accusation. Internal emails proving the hospital had known about equipment failures. Maintenance logs showing repeated requests that were denied. 3 other nurses who had come forward, emboldened by Hannah's courage, confirming a pattern of negligence that stretched back years. By the end of the day, Caldwell's composed facade had cracked completely. The board announced a full investigation. His administrative leave began immediately. Hannah's license was reinstated before she reached the parking lot. Her phone rang as she walked to the car. The number was familiar. Her mother. "Hannah, we need to talk. We saw the news. We never meant for things to go so far. We were scared, and we made mistakes. And you made choices." Hannah's voice was calm, free of the anger she had expected to feel. "You chose to protect yourselves instead of your daughter. You chose to believe a corporation over your own flesh and blood. We are family. Family does not testify against each other. Family does not abandon each other when things get hard." She paused, watching Ryan's truck pull into the lot. Scout's face visible in the passenger window. "I do not hate you, Mom, but I do not need your approval anymore. I found people who stand beside me without conditions. That is the only family I need now." She ended the call and did not look back. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight. 6 months later, a hand-painted sign appeared at the end of a dirt road in the Colorado Highlands. Mountain Hope Clinic. All welcome. Hannah had not returned to the big hospitals. The offers came, apologies wrapped in generous salaries, but she turned them all down. Instead, she converted the old barn on Ryan's property into something new. Examination rooms where ranch hands could get stitches without driving 40 miles. A waiting area where elderly neighbors gathered for blood pressure checks and conversation. A small pharmacy stocked with the essentials that rural families could rarely afford. Ryan built the shelves himself, installed the plumbing, painted the walls in the soft green color she chose because it reminded her of spring. He did not say much during those weeks of construction, but his presence spoke volumes. Every nail he hammered was a promise. Every board he cut was a declaration. Scout, fully grown now, appointed himself the clinic's official therapy dog. Nervous patients found their anxiety melting away beneath his gentle gaze. Children who cried at the sight of needles giggled when he rested his enormous head in their laps. On a quiet evening in late autumn, Hannah stood at the old wooden gate, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of amber and rose. The same gate where she had nearly died. The same gate where Ryan had spoken the words that changed everything. Footsteps crunched in the gravel behind her. Ryan appeared at her side, holding not coffee this time, but her gloves. The evening had turned cold. "You forgot these inside." She accepted them, their fingers brushing in the familiar exchange. "Thank you." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the light fade from the sky. Scout lay at their feet, his tail sweeping lazy patterns in the dust. "You have been repairing this gate for months," Hannah observed. "It keeps finding new ways to fall apart." "Maybe that is okay." She pulled on the gloves, flexing her fingers against the soft leather. "Broken things can be fixed." Ryan turned to look at her. This woman who had stumbled into his life more dead than alive. This woman who had saved his dog, challenged his isolation, reminded him that some things were worth fighting for. "Yeah," he agreed. "They can." The photograph on his cabin wall had not changed. 6 men still grinned from the Afghan desert, 5 of them gone forever. But new photographs hung beside it now. Hannah at the clinic opening, scissors poised over a ribbon, Scout sprawled across a patient's lap, tongue lolling, the two of them standing at this very gate, snow falling around them, something like peace in their eyes. Neither of them spoke of forever. They did not need to. Forever was happening already, one quiet morning at a time. Coffee waiting on the table, dinner warming on the stove, a dog who believed he had orchestrated everything from the beginning. Some families are born from blood. Others are built from the decision to stay when leaving would be easier. The decision to fight when surrender seems certain. The decision to open your heart when every instinct screams to keep it locked away. Ryan Hale had spent 3 years believing he could only maintain things, never keep them. Hannah Moore had spent years believing the world would always punish her for caring. But sometimes, two broken people find each other, not to fix what is damaged, just to stand together while the healing happens on its own. The gate stood strong now, rebuilt board by board, reinforced against whatever storms might come. Hannah leaned against it, Ryan beside her, Scout at their feet. The clinic lights glowed warm in the gathering dusk. The mountains rose eternal against the darkening sky. Sometimes the greatest miracles arrive without thunder or fanfare. Sometimes they come quietly, in a stranger's hand, reaching through the snow, in a dog who trusts before we do, in words we never thought we would be brave enough to speak. I need someone to stay. And you need a home. They had both come here to disappear. Instead, they found exactly what they needed. Each other.